You are all set, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Well, welcome to our goal setting session for Saturday, January 29th. We are calling the meeting to order at 9:01. And we have our meeting every year to just kind of align our goals and make sure we all agree and we know how to move forward. So we wake up early on a Saturday morning and get together and do this. So Madam City Manager, would you like to introduce the process? You're on mute.
Sorry. I'm wondering if we want to do a real quick roll call and then we'll get into the meeting itself.
Very good. So Madam City Clerk, if you could.
Yeah, Councilmember O'Brien.
Present.
Councilmember Beach.
Present.
Councilmember Coulson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Here.
Mayor Ortiz.
Here.
Great. So thank you. Welcome, everyone. It is bright and early on a Saturday. Our second Zoom goal setting. Hopefully next year we'll be in person. We'll see. So what we are going to do is we'll start out with public comments, and we're going to just go through those for a few minutes. And then every year we do our department head highlights, but this year we're going to put the council on the spot as well. And you were forewarned, so hopefully you read your emails. We're hoping everyone will just do 2 to 3 sentences, something that was a highlight from 2021 that's city related, something that you were proud of the city, or we did well, or some accomplishment that you want to highlight, and we'll have the department heads do that as well. And then several years ago, probably 4 years ago, maybe, we talked about some strategic priorities, and the council set 4 strategic priorities. And those are sustainability, transportation, housing, and infrastructure. And with the exception of last year, where we did sort of an all COVID all the time, we have been doing some deep dives in those various priorities. And so we're going to go back to that and talk about those. We'll do the sustainability and transportation ones first. We'll take a little break, and then we'll do housing and infrastructure. One more public comment session, and then a little wrap up. And we are going to try to get out by 11:30. So that is request to all of you to be concise in your comments so that we can get out. I know one council member has a hard stop just before 11:30, and nobody wants to sit on Zoom for 3 hours if we can help it. So with that, why don't we go into public comments? I see we have one so far. So Megan, do you want to take over the public comments here?
Sure. We also have an email, but we'll start with Jennifer Pfaff because her hand is up.
Right.
So go ahead, Jennifer.
Good morning, everybody. Am I there?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know where else to say this, so I just wanted to say it somewhere. I'm going to say it now. During the past several years, a number of items obviously got sort of came off the table and put to the side because of the housing issues. And one of them, I would really like to just bring back to the forefront if at all possible. And that was, I believe it was Councilwoman O'Brien was mayor at the time. I just can't remember exactly. And the issue was illegal removal of trees on private property and some other issues related to trees on private property. And you all gave the assignment to Margaret, I believe, and Bob to go back and study it. They came back with some kind of a draft. I've never saw the draft. I don't think you did either. And it ended up, I think, on Kathleen Kane's desk. And then there was a bunch of housing stuff that came up after that. And it, like other things, kind of came out of the spotlight. And so I'm just bringing it up because it's really, really important, especially now where we're going to see a lot more building and dense building I just wanted to bring it up that maybe it could be taken up again by our new attorney, Carol. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Pfaff. And you had something else to read, Megan?
Yes, and we have John Martos's hand up, so I'll let him speak first as well. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Council. John Martos. I'm the current chair of the Teaspoon Commission, Transportation Safety and Parking Commission. And I want to share with you the biggest concern that we hear on the commission, and that is about public pedestrian safety. Almost every month, someone in our public comment session will discuss concerns they have about pedestrian safety from vehicles, whether it's foot traffic or bike traffic. With respect to our downtown areas, the Broadway area, routes to school, thoroughfares to the Bayside area, and routes to our multimodal hubs. So as you consider goals for 2022 and projects throughout the year, I think you should ask yourself, how will this affect the traffic in the areas where these projects are being developed? Because an increase in traffic, as we know, affects pedestrian safety. There's a big project coming up near the Lion Hogue area that San Mateo is supporting, the Peninsula Interchange. And I know there was a big study done on Lion Hogue and safety and traffic concerns in that area. We may not have a lot of leverage on that project, but we should have a strong voice on what we would like to see in that project. So as you consider projects for 2022 and your goals, transportation and other things, ask yourself that question, or better yet, ask your staff, how will this project affect pedestrian bicycle safety in and around these project areas? I thank you for your time and all the time that you spend to make Burlingame a great place to live. And I look forward to hearing from you regarding traffic safety and parking issues in 2022. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Martos.
Next up, we have Manito. So let me unmute him. Go ahead, Manito.
Good morning. Good morning, Council. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor. I wanted to also thank you for the tough work that's been going on in the city for the last, year and a half, 2 years, and for getting us over the hump, hopefully, of what should be a decreasing amount of COVID incidences. I also wanted to support Commissioner Chair Martos' plea for pedestrian safety. Unfortunately, when we get accident statistics or collision statistics, it's too late to do anything. Accident statistics are notoriously lagging indicators of the problem. So the hope, as Mr. Martos was saying, is we could try to anticipate these issues and try to get things implemented sooner rather than later. And one thing that San Mateo did actually do recently, which I hope you will consider, is they had their city identify the top 5 locations where pedestrians were getting hit, and then to develop quick build or quick actionable plans to address those locations. I hope that is something that you will consider for this year for either pedestrians or bikes, just so we can get going, because the next 2 to 3 years is going to be really tough in Burlingame to drive a car. You have the grade step, you have El Camino. So this is the time for us to try to ramp up the use of everything that's alternative to cars. By the time these projects get on board and we try to get people to use alternative transportation, it's too late. So this is the time, 2022, 2023, to try to get those measures in place as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Velasco.
And I guess this is a question to the city manager. Would you rather me hold the public comment email that came in? It's about sustainability.
Yeah, let's hold that. I just checked it out. I think it's really relevant to that
Okay.
agenda item.
So then we have no more public comments, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. So then, Ms. Goldman, so we will be moving to item number 3, which is City Council and Department Head Highlights. So
Right.
I'll pass back to you.
So I'm going to ask the department heads to go first to give the council a little bit of extra time to think about what they want to say, since we don't usually put you on the spot like this. I have a request from Margaret to go first because she is out of town right now. So Margaret, department head highlight, just a couple sentences and you're muted. There you go.
I'm coming. So it's very hard, and Lisa always keeps us to 1 minute, and I've already wasted like 10 seconds. But the biggest thing that I'm the most proud of is our Park and Rec team. You know, it's, as everyone knows, this past couple of years have been tough, but the resiliency we've shown has been amazing during the uncertain and challenging times. And even all those things going on, and I think you'll see it with all the other departments too, we're still completing projects, updating playgrounds and improving dog off leash options. We had an amazing response from the team, and it was a full team effort for the storms that we had late last year, which would stretch us very thin. We've been doing lots of programs that the community has been asking for, and we keep changing them. Whatever the needs are, we've been pivoting to meet their needs, and we've had a limited staff to do that. And, you know, we have the new community center coming on. So while all that's going on, we have been rolling out new systems and getting ready for a new building. So at the end of the day, the Park and Rec team rocks.
So that was well beyond 2 to 3 sentences, but thank you, Margaret. This is an example of going too long. So we're going to try to go a little quicker with everyone else. So if we could go to Megan next.
Well, obviously mine is getting the district election process, the transition completed last year and into the beginning of this year. But I also just wanted to hint that my biggest accomplishment probably for this coming year is going to be the hard work of my 2 BHS interns, Ella and Ava Geary, as they're making an election website dedicated to our first-time voters.
Very cool. Thank you. All right, Sonia.
Hi, everyone. So mine is similarly staff. You know, we have in HR, we've borne the brunt of the changing COVID regulations, keeping up with them, figuring out what they are, as well as communicating them and keeping everybody safe in the workplace to, you know, to the greatest extent possible. So that's been a full-time job for myself and at least one other staff person. And yet we have full-time jobs. So we've managed to keep everything going, hiring people, benefits, leaves, everything else on top of COVID.
Great, thank you. Okay, Helen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very lucky to inherit the great, amazing team, finance team. With change of COVID and also leadership, my staff, they continue to deliver high-level service day to day. And then last week, our new utility system went live successfully. So I think this is huge accomplishment from our utility team as well, entire finance team. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Kevin.
Morning. It's hard to just choose one, but I'm going to say the zoning ordinance update, huge endeavor, and a big shout out to our planning manager, Ruben Hurin, who really led that effort. He was the perfect person in being our most tenured planner. But then also, and sorry, this is still the same sentence, the rest of our planning staff who went over each and every regulation, each and every table as a group. It was arduous, but it was really to calibrate the code. So it really was Burlingame's code. And we're all so pleased and excited about it.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Syed.
Good morning, everyone. Just like Kevin, it's hard to choose one project. And one project that I think worthy of mention today here is the construction of the parking garage at Highland Avenue. It's it was in many years in the making, but it's a project that will continue to benefit the community for decades to come. And that could not have happened without the great team we have in Public Works and the rest of the team, the rest of the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Syed. All right, Matuch.
So I think that keeping crime in check this past year, despite a lot of adversity, I'm not saying it's perfect, that improvements can't be made, but in light of what we see on the news and read on social media about crime all over the state and area, we managed to keep our crime numbers level with what we've seen in the past 5 to 7 years, even a slight decrease in some areas. We are also able to assign extra patrol and avoid any of those mob style grab and runs that we've seen. And all this while dealing with some pretty significant shortages from COVID-19 and the labor shortage. We've been down positions all year. But I'm proud of how the officers, dispatchers, and support staff stepped up to the challenge, working a lot of extra shifts with a few days off, some by choice, but mostly ordered. So big thank you to my entire department for their efforts, and to council and my fellow department heads for their support. It is much appreciated.
Thanks, Mike. Brad.
Sorry. Morning, Mayor and Council. Okay, so it doesn't seem like it, but we were still doing curbside service in the first half of 2021. So most proud of my staff transitioning from curbside into fully open. That wasn't easy. We have done a great job of keeping staff safe, but also the public safe while maintaining really, really good basic services in the library. Our next challenge will be increasing hours, going back to pre-pandemic hours, with some staffing issues, but I'm in full confidence that we can get that done, and that's it from the library. Thank you all.
Great, thanks, Brad. Bruce, Fire Chief.
Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Council. I don't want to repeat everything, but the team in the fire department, unbelievable. Never missed a beat and through this entire COVID. But the biggest one thing that we did is we started our community risk assessment standard of cover study, which we're going to hopefully conclude in April. And that'll give us a good overall review of the fire department in general.
Great, thank you. And Michael.
Thanks, Lisa. Good morning, Mayor and Council. The one thing I'm really proud of from the department was the DA, the development agreement for the 220 Park Post Office project. We're able to get that across the finish line. That allows the development of the post office project and also will allow for the development of the Town Square project. Big shout out to Scott for shepherding that while he was also acting as the interim and short-staffed in the office. So thank you.
Great. And you all stole my thunder because I always like to brag about my staff. We have an amazing department head team. They're all here on this call on a Saturday morning. Plus we have Nicole from Parks and Rec, not a department head, but helping out while Margaret's out of town. So I just really appreciate everyone who has worked so hard this past year. I'm also very proud that I hired a phenomenal new finance director, Helen Scott. Finance directors are hard to come by right now. It is a tough market. And Helen had big shoes to fill when Carol Augustine left after being with us for over 8 years, about 8.5 years. And I was able to find someone great to come in, and she's fit right in with our team. It's so important. Fit is so important. And then the council hired us a wonderful city attorney who also fits in just so well into our team. And that makes our jobs really so much easier and more fun. And so yay team. Okay, so I'm going to turn to the council and put you guys on the spot. So I will go with Mayor Ortiz.
Thank you. The biggest highlight, and I can think of, is our going to district elections, but I want to focus on the outreach that we did to the community. I think that was very special, and the city clerk did a great job with it. So that's my one thing.
Great. Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Thought you were going to go in the other direction. So let's just acknowledge that this is like picking between your kids. You know, you should never do it. It never ends well. But I focused on your question about proud of rather than highlight, and was I have to give a quick shout out to planning because it's just been amazing. But my proud of moment is the chief of police. Police departments across the country do not, usually if they're in the news, it's a bad thing. Our guys, and especially our chief, I think has really changed the culture from sort of warrior to guardian, from, keeping the peace to making peace. Most recently an event on the Bay side, but so many random calls from people talking about interactions with officers where they felt no bias, no prejudgment, and just trying to make things better. And I got to tell you, that's what makes me proud. It makes me really proud. So thank you very much, Chief Matucci.
That was lovely. Thank you. So next we have Councilmember Coulson.
Thank you. I'm sure we all agree with all of our colleagues and what they've all done. So I'm going to try to hit on something different. I think the thing I'm most proud about is the work we're doing down on North Rollins Road. The work that is going to expand our city and welcome in thousands of new people. And it's going to be bike and pedestrian. It's going to be sustainable, electrified. I think it's just a model for what other cities across this country can do to accommodate growth in a way that is inclusive and low impact and thoughtful and sensitive. It hits the sustainability, it hits the welcoming, it hits the, I'm sorry, but SB 9, that's niggling around the edges, and it's not going to do what we need to do. To me, the rezoning and the thoughtfulness and the financial acumen that we used to understand how real estate would work and how housing would actually be able to be developed there because land costs were low, and that rezoning that and the work that Kevin and his department did on getting that done. I think it's just something we should all be really, really proud of. And I'm very excited to watch this change over the next 5 years.
It's going to be great. Thank you. Councilmember Beach.
Thank you, Madam City Manager, and great highlights from colleagues. I think what I'd like to highlight is that I'm particularly excited about and proud of is how we had a huge team effort at the city, both at the staff level and the elected level, to keep the Broadway grade separation project moving forward. There was a lot that happened behind the scenes that many members of the public will never know about, but one huge highlight is staff work to really value engineer the project to bring the cost down in a way that harmonized the interests of not only the city, but the Caltrain corridor, the community, and the riders of Caltrain. And that was a really big lift, and it took a number of months of negotiation. And what that does is position that project and the advocacy to really make sure we're well positioned when federal funds start to flow, hopefully really next year. So just exciting to keep it moving. It's going to be safer and improve the quality of life. And it was a huge lift, particularly at the staff level, and it was great to be a part of it. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councilmember O'Brien.
The unfortunate thing about going last is everything's been said. So I am actually going to mention something that maybe most people don't really know about. So I have actually a special thank you for Director Glomstad and to Brad from our library, and also Stephanie Lee, who worked together to incorporate Burlingame into an age-friendly certified city. And this was an opportunity for us to really focus on the needs of older adults in Burlingame and developing a plan that will really focus on communications with older adults and really getting them more involved in the community and getting their feedback. Because many times we have a tendency to focus on families and kids, and we forget about the people that really set the foundation of the city. So I'm really proud of the two of them and their staff that were really highly motivated to get Burlingame age-friendly certified.
Great, thank you. So for those watching at home on YouTube or streaming or whatnot, there's a lot of work that's gone on the past year, and it's pretty impressive, particularly given all of the craziness with COVID and surge after surge and, not knowing what was going to happen, we really didn't just keep the wheels on the bus. We really moved a lot of really important projects forward. And I think that's reflected in everybody's highlights. So now we are going to go into item number 4, which is our strategic priorities. So again, I mentioned earlier that the council set these 4 priorities probably 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. So we're going to focus on sustainability first, and then transportation, and then we'll take a break. So I have a wonderful sustainability coordinator, Sial Michael, and she is going to lead us through that priority. So go for it, Sial.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about sustainability. What we're going to be doing today is a little bit different. Basically, you're going to help me set up my work plan for the year, and I'll understand what your priorities and interests are. So I sent everyone a link yesterday to do for an online survey. I'm going to share my screen so that we can look at it together, but you'll go to the live one. Let me see if that worked. Okay, I'm having,
Probably most of us have the live one
yeah,
on our screen.
I won't bother sharing my screen. We'll just walk through it then together. So the purpose of this is I wrote down a bunch of different exciting, different scale sustainability efforts, some that are ongoing and some that are new. And I was hoping that you could provide your input on how you would like to see them in 2022. And it's just very simple, yes, no, or maybe. And if you put down no for anything, let's say you put down no for electric vehicles, it doesn't mean you hate electric vehicles or don't want to see them in the city. It may just mean that we got a lot of chargers installed last year and maybe it's not the focus for it this year. So this is just meant to really show what you would like to dig into deeper in the coming up year. What this survey does not include is large infrastructure projects like sea level rise, which is an ongoing effort that Burlingame is actively participating in, and other things like bicycle lanes and Caltrain electrification and so on. And it also doesn't include the ongoing, just regular day-to-day work that I do as the sustainability coordinator for the city. So I'm going to go right into it. Okay, so the first section is electrification. I wrote existing homes, but electrification of everything. And this sort of starts small and gets a little bit bigger as we go down. So I'll just read it through and please ask any questions along the way. You could either respond now or you could respond in the end, and then we'll look at all the responses together. So the first one is provide incentives for electrifying existing homes, such as small rebates for purchasing electric heat pump appliances. That could be something that we do in partnership with, let's say, Bayren or Peninsula Clean Energy, or something we do on our own that maybe when people sign up for a permit, they get a small rebate. It could be, I don't think it needs to be huge, maybe $200 or so, and that would even offset the permit cost, but it could just be an incentive to invite people to look into this more. And also, we're not talking about hundreds of a year. The number of heat pumps a year, we could hopefully count on 2 hands, but this isn't a fast-going project. Second is consider building electrification reach code to apply to kitchen renovations and appliance replacements. That's meant to be that when a person replaces their heat a furnace or does a kitchen renovation, that they need to go electric. Next is to expand the reach code to require electric appliances for cooking and fireplaces in new construction. Right now we have an exemption that you do not need to use electric for cooking and fireplaces in new construction. So we could change that in a future reach code. And now this one is quite a big of a jump. You may have heard, some cities are exploring burnout target dates, where they're setting a date to end the use of all gas in the city. meaning let's say by 2045 that we no longer want to have existing or new homes using natural gas. Another one is to set a target date to be carbon neutral. That's pretty similar. You know, I'm not myself quite sure what the complete difference is between those two, but it's maybe more of a policy tool, one to be called carbon neutral versus like a burnout date. And then the last one is to look at our own municipal facilities and to commit to replacing our gas appliances at the end of their life as it becomes feasible. And that's a tough one because feasible, I mean, that's a costly one because we know we have older facilities. So that's something, you know, that we would balance. In some cases, it would not be feasible. Let's say at City Hall, that there's been a lot of talk about replacing it, but maybe in other facilities, it would be easier. I'm going to move down to e-mobility. We are going to be having a study session, hopefully in February, to talk about e-mobility. But I wanted to just pull out, you know, when we talk about e-mobility, it's often bike sharing and scooters. But I just wanted to see what you guys feel about a scooter program in Burlingame. In the past, we've done our focus in Line Bike was bicycles. Scooters have changed quite a bit over the years, and now there may even be they may be preferable. So it'd be good to hear what your take on that is. And then I think we got this even as a public comment, but it could be interesting to purchase some electric bikes for staff use to take around town. For electric vehicles, do we want to continue obtaining grants for more public EV charging stations? Also, do we want to offer small grants for multifamily EV charging stations such as $100 a unit? That may be on the lower end, but it could be an incentive to get building multifamilies, you know, invited and excited to do this. And that could also be as part of the permit process where they just have an easy rebate they can get. And if we do want to look into exploring and purchasing EVs for police cars, there's other departments out there, other cities that are doing that. For landscaping, the California Air Resources Board is banning the use, the sale, not the use of the sale of gas leaf blowers to go into effect in 2024. Do we want to help our commercial landscapers start switching over early to electric leaf blowers and providing an incentive such as $500 for commercial landscapers? Are we interested in a Lawn Be Gone program? I think that would be very effective in Burlingame. It could be something that we go through BOSCA or do on our own to provide some sort of incentive. And we want to more strongly encourage gray water usage. I think this is going to be coming down the building code eventually for new homes to be required to use gray water. That's when you use your laundry or faucet water to go into your outdoor irrigation. And the last two are about waste. First, we have SB 1383. Do we want to have a strong marketing campaign or outreach to multifamily buildings to enroll in composting? That would most likely be in partnership with Rethink Waste and Recology. And do we want to provide funding to pilot providing composting bins in public areas, such as our downtown corridors and high usage parks, which is tricky, but it's coming down the line and could be interesting to focus on. And then we have our disposable foodware ordinance. I think it would be interesting, you know, we all know the pressure that restaurants are under, and that ordinance actually was meant to go into effect in March and is going to be postponed until October with consideration to that pressure that restaurants are under. But it could be interesting to provide some sort of initial funding for restaurants to make that initial purchase of compostable foodware or even reusable. And there's also a lot of energy going on around reusable foodware programs that you, let's say, use a takeout container and eat at home or wherever you're taking your meeting, let's say at lunch, and then you bring it back and it gets washed either by an outside service or the restaurant. And there's Reusable San Mateo is a nonprofit that's leading that, so to contribute funding to their effort. So everyone take a minute to to complete those. And I guess the one, I'll try and share my screen now because I'm able to see the responses, but I'd want to be able to show that to you all. And if it's just for some reason my settings isn't allowing that. So far I only see one response. So please complete those. Okay, here's a few more. So I'll just read it to you and then I'll be happy to send this to you afterwards so that everyone could view it on their own. Yeah, it's just, I think just not allowing me to do that. Okay, for responses, one more. Great, okay. Thank you, everyone. So I'm gonna let you know what I see here, but we'll send you the responses. Maybe, I wonder if I could. Okay, I'm able to send it. I think, okay, that's okay. I don't want to waste any more time. Okay, so the strongest yes I see for electrification is for the first one, to provide incentives for electrification for purchasing heat pumps. And I
just Sigal, if each one of us hits go back and look, it will go back and we can see all the responses ourselves. If you hit go back.
All 5?
Yeah, I can see everybody.
Okay, excellent, awesome. Thank you, Donna. That makes it a lot easier to talk through. Can everyone else see that as well?
What are you supposed to click?
Donna, you're on mute. Can you say that again?
When you get to the end of the survey, it says there's 3 options with little links. Go back and see survey.
See previous responses?
Yeah. And that'll let you, it'll show up as a bar graph.
The actual questions are not, they're all cut off, so it's hard.
Well, if you hover over the bar, it shows you what the question is. So if I hover over the blue big bar, everyone said yes to providing incentives for electrifying existing homes. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's a strong yes, and the other 2 strong yeses for 4 is to set a target date for Burlingame to be carbon neutral and to commit to municipal facilities. I don't know if we want to talk more about those or just good to know that that's what I'll be working on and that this will be coming back to you. Lisa, should I move on or do you feel like we should dig into these more?
I think you could move on and then we'll probably flesh out what those mean in individual, staff reports or study sessions or whatnot.
Yes, exactly. Okay. For e-mobility, okay, we have 2 for e-scooter sharing. So that could be when we bring it to study session, something to learn more about and see, what that could look like in Burlingame, either to understand it more or just prefer bicycles over scooters. And then that's excellent that there's support for e-bikes for staff use. I think that could be really interesting for different departments. For electric vehicles, we have yeses all around. So I think we have a strong electric vehicle work going on in the city and we'll keep strengthening it. Chief Matucci has definitely noticed that we want to purchase EVs for police cars, and that's something he's aware of also that's happening. We've talked about it, and for that to happen, we would need to strengthen the charging capabilities at the police station. So that would be the first step into seeing what can be done there to provide more charging access. For landscaping, 3 for electric leaf blowers, and then 5 for a lawn be gone program. I'm really happy to see that. I would love for the city to offer that as well. I think Bosca in the spring will be opening up the options for cities. So hopefully we'll be bringing that back to you then of what we could enroll in. And then gray water is something we'll continue exploring. For SB 1383, excellent. We'll reach out to multifamilies and look into providing composting, looking at some pilot options. That'll be working mostly with Margaret and Recology and Rethink Ways and seeing what's allowed in our current agreement with them and where we could increase. And it is very tricky. And the big issue now is contamination. Even if we put a composting bin in these public areas, if they get picked up with all sorts of other trash, they're not going to end up with compost. But that's part of the big education that's continually needed around recycling and composting. And then the disposable foodware ordinance, 3 to help restaurants purchase an initial set, and 5 to participate in reusable San Mateo, which is great to see because that program is right now running and working on pilots in Half Moon Bay, and we're sort of next in line for that effort. So it'll be interesting to see what and they would like a funding commitment. So thank you for that support, seeing that we'll be able to provide it to them. This was really, I'm going to keep these responses and hold them closely through the year as I go through these projects. This was very helpful for me. I don't know if anyone, I see the other comments. Can we investigate installing a windmill power generator on the bay? Maybe. I love that. That's definitely big thinking. Create incentives for restaurants to utilize existing EV charging stations. Does that maybe mean like providing like payment cards that they could use at the existing charging stations? Who I can't see who said that, but
so that was mine.
What were you picturing for that?
My concern is I see a lot of our existing EV charging stations sitting idle, not being used. So somehow either educate people to let them know where they are or provide some financial incentive for them to use them. So I just think we need to explore ideas to use them a little more.
That's a great idea. Thank you. And then can we discuss the partnering with PC on their e-bike program? It's been incredibly successful. Yes, I think that would be very interesting. I'll definitely reach out to Peninsula Clean Energy and learn more about it and see if we could offer something similar or partner with them. And then if agreeable to majority of city council, support the creation of Vision Zero policy. I know that's Emily, do you want to say something about that?
Wherever it's appropriate, or it might even be in the next section, but I was thinking about the public comments that we heard at the beginning about the concerns of safety for pedestrians, cyclists, all modes of transportation with increased traffic. And we've learned about Vision Zero policies informally in the past, even at a Council of Cities dinner, and it would be, I think, an interesting policy to explore. And it seems that it's part of sustainability too. It might, there's some intersection there, whether it's sustainability and also safety. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all for going through this exercise with me. It warms my heart to see all these strong yeses in these important areas. And, talking to any city, it's clear that the city council is what directs how strong sustainability is. And we're fortunate in Burlingame that you're very supportive of it. So look forward in future staff reports and agenda items for these issues to come up.
Thanks, Sigal. Megan, maybe now's the time for us to hear from the public comment you received via email.
Sure, and then if anyone else has one, you can raise your hand. But the one we got from an email was entitled Air Quality. It's from Amy, and she says, "Hi, I'd like to share my concerns about air quality and ways improving it should be part of sustainability goals. Even low levels of PM pollution is bad for health and shortens lifespans. Wildfires, transportation, and construction are largest contributors to pollution, but there are also very localized sources of pollution we should address as well. 1, wood burning fireplaces and stoves. Our town is too densely populated to still allow this. It is the largest contributor to poor air quality in the winter months. It is discouraging that I am subjected to bad air from my neighbor's chimney or spewing smoke. I dread walking my dog on winter evenings. Please consider a ban on wood fires and stop allowing almost complete tear down homes to keep fireplaces and chimneys. 2, gas-powered leaf blower. These inefficient 2-stroke engines are not regulated and large polluters. It is most hazardous to the users, but also to everyone around. Most months there aren't leaves on the ground, and I watch these machines blow dirt around, which is also eroding the soil. I substitute teach at Burlingame schools, and it is appalling that we allow these to be used anywhere nearby. School windows are open due to COVID, so fuel emissions and dust and noise are in the air our children are breathing. This is not necessarily school landscaping, usually from neighborhood homes. I believe there's a plan to phase these out, but please consider doing this sooner. Many towns have already banned these, including Palo Alto and Oakland. Surely Burlingame can do this too. We all share our air and need to do a much better job keeping it clean. Thank you for all you do to make Burlingame an even better place to live. And then we also got an email from David Harris.
Who sent that? Is there a name on that?
Yes, Amy Flanzer. I can forward the email to you if you'd like. We also got an email from David Harris. He says, I strongly support incentives for gardeners to switch from gasoline to electric leaf blowers. For people who work at home, leaf blowers are incredibly disruptive on the days they are used in a particular neighborhood. Gasoline blowers are also a health hazard for the people who use them and generate a great deal of air pollution. I don't have any more emails. So I think public comment is done. I don't see any hands raised, but I see that Councilmember Coulson has her hand up, Mayor Ortiz.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Coulson.
Thank you, through the mayor. What I'm wondering is when we're focusing on leaf blowers, and we just heard a lot of information or interest in that, we're always trying to focus on the gardeners, like get the gardeners the new leaf blower. And I took a different approach. And what I did was I bought my own electric leaf blowers and I leave them at my house. And they're like $150 for 2. And so when my gardeners come to my house, they use my electric blowers and they leave their leaf blowers in. And the reason I point this out is because I think we might be approaching it the wrong way by trying to force the gardeners into it. And we should be incentivizing the residents to ask their gardeners to use electric leaf blowers when they come to their homes. And maybe if we flipped it around like that and incentivize the homeowners to buy them, they're very, very inexpensive, offer a little rebate there or something, I think we might actually solve the problem easier. And the other issue is when you electrify the blowers with the gardener, they never have enough charge to go all day long. So this solves that problem, and and we flip it around. So I'm just going to point out that maybe that's a different way to think about it.
Yeah, the city of San Mateo does offer a rebate both to residents and gardeners, and maybe with that exact same thinking behind it, that the gardeners will end up using it no matter what, whichever way it gets incentivized. Well, there's 3 strong for it, so I'll definitely still look into it as a potential program, especially looking at San Mateo's success with it.
Thanks, Sigal. Are there any other council comments before we move on to our next strategic priority?
Through the mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I just would like to echo, we do hear a lot about residents' concerns about the leaf blower. So however we can tackle that and help create the incentives we need, I think that's a really good thing that's been flagged today, and appreciate everybody's creative solutions.
Sounds like a good study session.
Great. Okay. With that, we're going to move on to transportation, and this one is Syed. Thanks, Sigal.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, Mayor Ortiz and Council. So with regards to transportation, I think many of the comments that I heard earlier, Lisa, is it infrastructure or transportation? Just want to make sure.
Transportation.
Transportation, right, got it, thank you. Because there are so many common elements between transportation and infrastructure, so I wanted to make sure that I provide a proper update. Majority of the transportation projects, programs that local agencies and regional agencies these days are focusing are related to active transportation. And some of the comments that were made earlier that regarding the safety of pedestrians, and I will go in addressing that as part of our work program. Although the city is working on many transportation projects, for the purposes of this meeting, I will provide update regarding the projects that we currently have on books that we are working on, primarily bike ped projects. Since the completion of the bike ped master plan, city has been busy working on several high priority bike ped projects that were identified in the plan. The top priority was California Drive bicycle facility. As the council is aware, the project scope involves constructing a class 4 facility, which is a separated bike facility from Broadway to Oak Grove. And the project is currently under design and will be in construction this summer. We received grant funding in the amount of $800,000, and we have other local match that we are able to implement this project. And California Drive was identified as one of the high risk bike safety area as part of not only the master plan, but also other studies that were done through the county. And so some of those locations, high risk safety locations, are included in that project. The next project I would mention, you feel free to ask any questions about any of these projects as we go along. Burlingame Avenue train station pedestrian improvements, that was also one of the high priority projects. We were able to secure grant and in the amount of $600,000. The project is currently in design and will be in construction this summer. Essentially, the project will improve the pedestrian circulation on east side of the Burlingame Avenue train station on Burlingame Avenue, and the tennis court. All of that area will be reconfigured and will make much more safer for pedestrians to circulate there, and as well as the motorists to have a more narrower street for them to not make wider turns or basically traffic calming elements. The next project that I would talk about is the Neighborhood Bike Boulevard. This is a project that Councilmember Beach has requested for many years, and also that we had received many comments during the bike ped master plan to make this improvement. Staff has been working on this project to essentially to have an alternative to California Drive, where the bicyclists or can actually go from north of Broadway, towards Burlingame downtown through the residential streets. And it will go along Paloma and partly along Cappuccino. And it will connect to east-west routes along the way. And it will come all the way to Oak Grove. And we have another project after that to connect to the downtown. And this project is currently in the design process, and we are working with the advocates, and we'll be bringing this to Traffic Safety Commission and the BPAC to receive their comments. This was also one of the projects that was identified in the bike ped master plan. In addition to these projects, we have submitted several grant applications under the Transportation Development Act, Article 3, for constructing buffered Class 2 bike lanes on Truesdale, Murchison, and Davis Drive in the amount of over $1 million or so. We are waiting for the grant decisions to come about, and which we will hear sometime this spring. And that will be a huge, and again, those projects are ready, essentially more or less shovel ready to go into design and construction if we receive the money. And finally, we have several bike safety projects that would address Chair Marto's Traffic Safety Chair Marcho's concerns about the pedestrian safety, and also Mr. Manito's concerns regarding improving pedestrian safety. Those projects are being part of quick build projects funded by MTC grant that we received recently in the amount of $200,000. So, and many of these routes are located in the school area as part of this Safe Routes to School program, and some of them are near the parks location. So they're citywide, and there are several dozens of these improvements, and staff is working on them. And the project scope involves installing crosswalks, high visibility crosswalks, signage, other improvements, and some of them have also bulb outs. But again, costs will be a determining factor whether we are actually going to build concrete bulb outs or we're going to install other ways of addressing those concerns. And we are continuously monitoring the Lion Hole traffic conditions and to see if any other further improvements are necessary for that in advance or of the Peninsula Interchange project. We haven't heard anything from Caltrans yet about that project, but we are working on making sure that we are installing stop signs and striping and other improvements as we continue to monitor the situation over there. So these are the immediate transportation projects that we have. We have many other projects that I will not talk about right now because they are going to be coming to City Council that will require a lot more detailed discussion, such as Old Bayshore Highway. We're working on it. We'll be coming to you at the February 7th City Council meeting. I will have a lot more detail about what we are looking at. And we are also looking at the Rollins Road, as the council discussed earlier about the bike ped project. So they will be coming at a future meeting to the City Council. I'd like council to provide any feedback, any direction, anything else that you would like to see in our bike ped priorities. Obviously, these have been coming from the bike ped master plan, but if there's anything else you would like us to focus, I will take notes of that.
Thank you, thank you. I see Council Member O'Brien's hand is raised.
So I have a quick question through the mayor. Syed, is there anything going to be done in regard to the crosswalk on El Camino and Bellevue? That to me is a continual dangerous intersection with people trying to cross there, and the cars just don't stop.
Councilmember O'Brien, it's so interesting that it's so timely you asked this question. In fact, yesterday I was able to get the Caltrans to respond to me about a project to install high visibility crosswalk at that intersection. So they're going to be working on that, as well as several other intersections along El Camino in Burlingame.
Great, thank you. It's good to hear.
Thank you. Councilmember, Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Thank you. I'm grateful to Councilwoman O'Brien for asking that question. I likewise, a couple of those crosswalks in the middle of El Camino near McKinley are just horrible. You can't hardly even see them. So thank you for asking and answering. My question is, we've touched over the years on the idea of creating a much more robust shuttle system from our Bayside to our downtown that would allow pedestrians to get downtown without necessarily driving and so forth. It's always been, it feels to me, sort of kicked down the road. But now that the Bayside is really in the throes of development, it feels to me important to understand what the costs would be and to begin to do sort of a cost benefit analysis of developing a much more robust and hopefully bi-directional shuttle system, one that would move both clockwise and counterclockwise. I think we would get a lot of use, and I think we'd save a lot of car trips.
This is a great point, Councilmember Brownrigg, Vice Mayor Brownrigg. We had started that evaluation process, but then COVID happened, and we kind of parked that project. But we plan on resuming that, and also our existing shuttles that we have along the Bayfront, which is funded by Samtrans. Currently they're not as fully occupied. Well, they're better operating than the other shuttles in the county, but because of the COVID situations, things have changed somewhat. So we are definitely going to be putting that in our books to see how we can come up with a program that would benefit folks and take away the solo trips between downtown and as well as the Bayfront area. We'll come back to council in a future date.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate it. I do believe it could also be a big benefit to our older citizens who would like to get downtown from our residential districts. I don't see it as only a Bayside to downtown kind of connector, but really a community connector. So thank you very much, Mr. Director.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I'd love to talk more about that. So with that, Councilmember Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to Syed and his team for the great work they do, and the other colleagues' comments as well. I guess here I'd just love to pitch to see if there's excitement and traction perhaps from the council and from staff to talk a little bit more this year about the potential of a Vision Zero policy. For those who mentioned it in the last section, but I think this is really an appropriate place to dig in. For members of the public who may not be familiar with Vision Zero, it's policy framework that the elected leaders set that makes a commitment to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries, absolutely zero tolerance for injuries to make our community safer and more equitable for all forms of mobility. And it started in Europe in the 1990s. It's taken hold there. It has proven that communities that adopt these Vision Zero policies reduce injuries and traffic fatalities. It's also working here in the Bay Area. There have been communities in Daly City, South San Francisco most recently adopted a policy. There's others that are doing it. And what's different about it is it's a data-driven, systems-driven approach to safety. So we all have our hotspots that we think are important to address in the community, but it takes a data-driven approach and it empowers staff to make recommendations that are absolutely uncompromising about safety for all modes and how the infrastructure, the speed limits, the technology can improve the roadway and the sidewalks to make things safer for people. I think it's a really important policy, and I hope that we might, now that we've done the important work of the Bike Ped Master Plan, I know Director Mertuzza and I have talked about this might be a good time potentially to consider a Vision Zero policy for the city of Burlingame. So thanks for considering that.
Thank you for that. Any other comments from colleagues? Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
I'd just like to stand in broad support for the idea of Vision Zero. I don't know enough about the program itself, but certainly the goal is worthy. And I guess my only caution would be I'm sure Councilwoman Beach does too, I don't want the policy to be read into we're against housing, we're against more development because that's more cars on the road. And I just think I think one wants to be careful how it gets used, but clearly the goal of zero traffic fatalities and pedestrian fatalities is a worthy one. So I stand in support of the goal.
Sounds good. I see Councilmember Coulson.
So, before putting a lot of resources into this, I'd really like to have the data to understand, how many fatalities we have in Burlingame, how over the years, the number of accidents, the high accident areas, because I don't want to put a lot of effort to solve a problem that might be a tiny problem, or understanding, is this a big problem or a little problem? And, to me, maybe this even dovetails in with something like, the cameras around town where we can then, keep track of, we have information like if somebody is a hit and run and then we have a camera, we can see who's got the license plate for that accident. So to me, these two things, police, the safety, the cameras, and maybe the Vision Zero kind of net into one another, or certainly don't stand in isolation. So that's just my comment.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Brien.
Yes, actually, Councilmember Coulson mentioned what my question was going to be in regard to maybe Chief Matucci can look at the accident rate and where those accidents happen. I think we also have to look at, people have to take responsibility and accountability themselves also. And so to me, that's kind of an increase of enforcement, because unless, people are pointed out of their bad behavior, it's going to continue. And it can't be us always as government trying to solve all the problems of bad behavior. I think people need to look at bad behavior and how do we fix that. And also there's a whole education component, because I do agree, many people are speeding through Burlingame. Many people are using their cell phones in Burlingame. Many people are rolling the stop signs in Burlingame. So to me, there's an enforcement issue also. So to me, this is more of a community issue and not just a, city council, government, issue. This is something that needs to be intertwined throughout the whole community.
Thank you. And then I'll just finish this one off. My thoughts are striving for 0 fatalities is a good goal. And I think the question is how much resources we'll put into it, and that's going to be based on how big the problem it is. So I think it's important that we assess how big the problem it is. But I think I absolutely agree that is a good strategy and looking for 0 fatality. So I'm in favor of that. Do we have any other comments about transportation before we move along? And I don't see any, so back to you, Ms. Goldman. I think are we taking a break now?
I think we should, sorry, not to interrupt. I think we should check to make sure there's no public comment on this item.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk, for keeping me in my place.
I didn't get any emails, but I do see Manito with his hand up. So Manito, go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you again. Tuned in. Maybe I missed the last part about the Vision Zero goals. I wanted to support the goals, but I also wanted to temper the expectations of people, like the council member Keegan and Coulson had mentioned. There is a personal responsibility aspect of it. And there's also the resource issue. But just as a practitioner, this is a goal. And it's not just fatalities that we're trying to avoid. There may be 0 fatalities or 1 or 2. But 1 or 2 is too many. And it's not fatalities, it's also serious injuries. Like somebody doesn't have to die for us to pay attention. So I think the focus should be on serious injuries, fatalities, and it has to be data driven. And as to staff resources, I think this goes more into when this is evaluating options. There's option A, option B, option C. It should take a look at Vision Zero and say, which does Vision Zero out of option A, B, or C is supported by the recommendation. So it doesn't necessarily more has to do with smarter spending, smarter thinking about what the options are. And if Vision Zero is going to be adopted as a goal, then that should be used when you're deciding between options A, B, or C. And the last thing I'll say is that I'm also looking forward to the neighborhood way projects. I happen to live in one of the bike boulevards that's been proposed. I filled out the survey. I haven't heard anything yet, but I'm looking forward to hearing what is planned on my street and on the neighboring streets around Broadway, where people are speeding and people aren't paying attention coming around turns. And it's increasingly so with the reduced traffic in the pandemic. People feel free to whip around corners pretty fast or drive really close to sidewalks. So I'm looking forward to all these improvements happening in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Velasco. Ms.
Yeah, I don't see any other hands up, and let me just check my email one more time. Oh, I do have an email now. There's one email from David Harris. He says, I continue to see, the email is entitled Issues with Rotary on California near Stacks. I continue to see drivers hesitate about how to navigate the new rotary near Stacks. Drivers sometimes yield when they are not supposed to and don't yield when they should. In addition, drivers continue to ignore the flashing lights for pedestrian crossings. Has there been any feedback from the public to police or other agencies about the rotary? Are there any solutions so that motorists use it as intended? Yes, Steve.
Okay, do we want to respond to that one, or we just want to? We could,
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to mention that I think there are times that certain motorists do not abide by the signage and essentially, don't yield to the traffic in the roundabout. But I think the improvements that are out there are superior to what we used to have. We have so many flashing signs, and I think I've heard a lot of positive comments. But from time to time, you find people are not abiding by the signage. It's similar to any other situation, like not stopping at the stop sign. So it's an issue of enforcement, and our police department can't be there all the time. They make observations certain times of the day, but it's staff is. I think it's a lot of improvement than what it used to be, and it's much safer. The traffic is much calmer, so it's a huge improvement.
and I would have to say it's a dramatically dramatically safer for pedestrians. So that's a huge. And my observation is that in general it works well. I do see some people who don't know exactly where to yield, but in general, I think it works well, and I'm very pleased with the way it turned out. Council member or Vice Mayor Brownrigg, I see your hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be quick. I completely agree with you, and I'm a cyclist. I think it's like so much better. But to tie the last two subjects together, as we gather data, we'll be able to see if there are challenges with this intersection or any other intersection that are real. And so I certainly support gathering that data and having a look at it. But just personal experience, I think it's so much better than it was, and that drivers have become much more familiar with it than they were at first.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. And with that, do we have any other public comment, Madam City Clerk?
No, we do not.
And so then that, Madam City Manager, then I guess we will take a 10-minute break. Is that
Sure, I
correct?
just wanted to make one point about the roundabout. When it first opened, we did a lot of education through our electronic newsletter and social media. And so we can resurrect that information and blast it out periodically just to remind people of how it's supposed to work. Of course, that only goes to residents. If there's people who aren't from here and don't read the newsletter, they're not going to know it. But I think there's so much signage now that hopefully people are following that. With that, we are going to take a 10-minute break. So we are going to reconvene at 10:25 on the dot. So it's actually a 12-minute break.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, it looks like the 10:25.
We're ready. Do we have all of our council members back?
Raise your hand if you're not here.
Mhm. Looks like
I
one is
think-
still off video, so I don't know if she's back.
Yeah, Councilmember O'Brien, if you are back but not on video, please let us know. No, so we'll just wait a few minutes.
Okay.
We're doing well with time, so.
We are.
Allow me to ask Councilwoman Coulson, since we're waiting for a minute, how did you add a picture to your Zoom? Because I thought I used to have one and now it just says my name when I'm not on screen.
So you have to go in, usually you have to go in through your computer. Some of these options are not available on the iPad or the phone. And you go into the settings and then you work through the settings and it will allow you for an avatar.
Because I looked at settings.
Let me see if I can do it on my iPad.
And not to worry, Ms. Ware, whenever you want to start.
I think maybe we should get going.
Okay.
And we have a weird echo. So maybe everyone could mute themselves. There we go. Okay. Our next topic is housing, and our community development director, Kevin Gardner, is going to lead this part of the program. Thanks, Kevin.
Great, thank you. I do have some slides. They will go fast, I promise. Housing's been a big priority of the city and the city council over the last few years. We keep a monthly track of the housing residential applications, both approved as well as under review, and update it monthly on burlingame.org/major projects. And then as of January this month, this is the one slide I'll spend a little bit of time on. There's currently 1,918 units that are entitled, and that includes either planning commission approvals or under construction or newly completed within the last year. Of those, 308 are below market rate in either very low, low, or moderate income. The largest category is low income category. This is a big achievement. 5 years ago, the city had a grand total of 13 moderate income units in its inventory, and those were affordable for a period of either 10 or 15 years. Now 308 are online or coming, and those are affordable for either 25, 30, or 55 years. So that's a big achievement in a fairly short amount of time. All of the new projects are 55 years. Under review are 751 more units, and of those 57 are below market rate. I want to spend a second just to discuss the math there. You may see, well, how come it's only 57 out of 751? Isn't our requirement 10%? It is. There have been changes to state density bonus law in the last couple of years where there's been clarification that the affordable requirement is taken off of the base density. So for example, in Rollins Road, we have a base density of 70 units per acre. They then take 10% of that, apply a bonus on top of that, but the bonus is basically the affordable units have been taken out at the first base density, and then affordable units are not taken out of the bonus units either. So in practice, we end up with less than 10%. That is something we may want to look at as part of the housing element update. All cities are doing the housing element updates right now, and the Bay Area jurisdictions are required to have their housing elements updated and adopted by the end of this year. So we have an outreach schedule, which I'll share with you now, or in a minute, sorry. I do want to make a point. Burlingame is in I think an enviable position in that through the general plan, we found enough sites and zoning districts to accommodate the numbers that the state is asking us to accommodate in the coming cycle. That's 3,257 new units. To clarify what the obligations are for a city is to provide the zoning so that a developer who wants to build units can come in and find a place to build them. The city does not build the units unless it's a project like Village. But the good news is some cities are doing a mad scramble to figure out where they're going to put more housing. This community already did that hard work as part of the general plan update. So in terms of community engagement, our focus is going to be, unless there's interest on more sites, and that is of course always on the table, it's really on policies and programs. How can we make our housing programs better, policies better, and such to be a better fit for the community and provide the types of housing that we need for our residents. So we're going to do a whole lot of outreach in the next couple of months, starting with stakeholder interviews next month. And we'll be interested to hear from council members on stakeholders you would like us to talk to. We've already had a couple of meetings with Housing for All Burlingame, which is our local housing advocates. Those have been very constructive and helpful, and we look forward to continuing to communicate with them. Other suggestions we would like to hear from the council. We have our annual progress report, and right now we have it scheduled for the March 1st City Council meeting. This is basically our report card that we do every year and provide to the state, which shows similar to what we just saw on that earlier slide, where are we in production, where are we on building permits, and such. We plan to have a community meeting in March. We haven't set the date, but it'll be, my guess is early March. We are working with MIG, who is was our consultant on general plan and zoning. They'll also be helping us with outreach. And we have a couple of meetings planned. After that first community meeting, we'll do some follow-up pop-up events. Some of you may remember pop-up events we did in the general plan, either on Broadway or downtown. So we plan to do some of that. Chamber of Commerce has graciously offered to give us a booth at the farmers market. So we know that that's one great opportunity to engage with the community. We'll have a second community meeting in April where we'll reflect on what we've heard and come up with some proposals that will go into the draft. And then the sort of formal cap of this process will be the annual joint City Council Planning Commission meeting on April 24th, which will allow both the council and the Planning Commission to receive a report back from the community outreach, give us feedback, and help us refine the policies and plans, policies and programs that would go into the new housing element. We have a webpage at burlingame.org/housing element. Right now, it doesn't have a whole lot. It says it's coming, and then it does have all of our annual progress reports from the last 8 years, as well as the current housing element. And then there's also a sign up. It's just a very simple Survey Monkey, fill in the blank with your email, but this will allow us to start creating an interest list for people who specifically want to hear about the housing element. We will, of course, do outreach through e-news and through Nextdoor and other channels. But if somebody is particularly interested and wants to make sure they don't miss a meeting on the housing element, we will have a separate email outreach through that website. So with that, that's a very quick overview of where we are with housing. And there's certainly lots more to discuss, but I'm open for questions and then council discussion.
So, colleagues, questions, comments? Council member or Vice Mayor Brownrigg. You're on mute, Michael.
Sorry, so I'll go. So one, as I said right at the beginning, I had a hard time deciding what I was most proud of. I am definitely incredibly proud of the work that our planning department has done to help transform Burlingame and to keep us welcoming to people of all different economic levels at the same time as keeping what makes Burlingame special. And I think that has been a tremendous lift over years. And I just commend Director Gardner and the whole team, both in planning and in building, because it's two sides of the same coin. To put the number in perspective, I think it helps. 1,900 plus units already approved. This is off a base of 12,500 units in total. That's our total housing units in this city. So more than 15% uplift just so far, and there's more to come. So again, incredibly proud of what we're trying to do. And what we've set in motion, not just some fill in the blank, paperwork exercise by Rena, but an actual commitment to finding places where housing is going to get built, not just make believe. And I say that with being fully critical of the state's approach to this, which I think has been backwards. Having said that, and also I'm going to say one thing. I strongly believe, and the data overwhelmingly supports, that if you want more affordable housing, you just have to build more housing. So I don't believe that there's a tension between building market rate and affordable, because all housing is important at this stage on the peninsula. That said, when we can build affordable housing, we have a crying need for it. And so I do look forward to seeing whether we can tweak those requirements going forward. We talked about that when we first established this several years ago, that we would look and see if properties were getting built with the rather modest requirements that we put on developers. They are getting built. So seeing whether we can increase the number of affordable units in new construction, I'm a big believer in. And so I just wanted to add those comments, but thank you, Director Gardner, for all of the work, for your good humor, not to mention the town square, which we haven't even talked about, and all of that work in our commercial side too. I mean, and I know this is the housing update, but the amount of work that you've done and your department has done on the Bayside, on the downtown, and on Rollins Road is tremendous. So thank you.
And the zoning ordinance. Tremendous. It really is tremendous. And yeah, I echo that. And I see Councilmember Coulson.
Thank you. So I really appreciate this update, and I am also really forward-looking on the housing element. And I think this is going to be a wonderful opportunity to reconnect with our community and share with them our progress, and also the aspirations that we have for the future. I have one just sort of quick question. So when SB 9 was implemented, I mean, technically you can take every single family home and there could be 4 homes on there. How does that count into the RENA cycle and the zoning of land for meeting our RENA numbers? Because, sort of technically you could make the argument that with SB 9 passing, we just rezoned, or Burlingame has now been rezoned to entirely meet our RENA numbers, probably for 3 cycles. And I'm just curious how that's playing out in conversations with other, and again, I think it's one of the sort of silly unintended consequences of a law that I think we wasted a lot of political capital on, and we just ended up, alienating. And I think a lot of it had to do with the tone and the language around SB 9 being somewhat accusatory and, implying that single family homes and zoning is elitist and racist, et cetera. And I just want to kind of figure out how to heal from all that conversation and bring everybody back into the fold, because I'm a little worried that that battle, which was, not particularly productive in terms of housing production in a town like Burlingame, has upset and alienated a lot of people who had previously been really supporting our efforts to build housing.
Thank you, Councilmember Coulson. Very good points. And Councilmember O'Brien.
Yeah, so I have 2 questions to our director. One, if you can refresh my memory, ADUs, is that counted into these numbers?
Yes, not only are the ADUs counted, but HCD, which is the Department of Housing and Community Development, has an assumption formula that certain percentages can be counted as in the different income categories.
So that was my next question. How do you determine the income categories of the ADUs?
Yeah, and that's based on, they've done years now of sort of research and audits. So they have a pretty good sense of how ADUs are being used. And, some of them are available to households for free, which is, friends and family, and that does count. Those are households that are not paying rent. Others are at market value and some are somewhere in between. So we can definitely count them, and those have been, we've received a lot of them in Burlingame. So it's, a city of Burlingame size can't meet all of its goals with just the ADUs, but it is a big piece of the puzzle that is helpful for that. And it's also helpful for providing housing.
So do we have a breakdown on how these ADUs are utilized and the income levels it fits into?
There have been a couple of studies. I don't have numbers right at hand now, but there have been studies done both, as I mentioned, through the state level housing community development, and then also 21 Elements, which is our local county consortium, has done some research as well. So certainly present some of that information through this outreach with the housing element. And
Yeah, that would be appreciated, because I'd really like to have a better lens on how they are being utilized in Burlingame, because as you have said, quite a few are being built. So it's good that it's being built. I just hope it's being utilized for the correct reasons. Then my second question is to go back a little bit about the 10% affordable housing doesn't incorporate the bonus numbers. So I would actually like it to consider to incorporate the bonus units. To me, that's an advantage for developers, which is great, but I still think it needs to be incorporated in that number. And it should be 10% of the total, not 10% of the base unit size or the base unit number.
Yeah, and I think going forward, we can look at, so maybe we raise the percentage above 10, knowing that the way the state law is now situated, it's going to come back down to a different level because of the way they're counted. But and
it would have to be a percent. If that increased percentage though would only be applied to projects that incorporate a bonus.
That's right. And that, actually, that's a good point. So you could distill it between projects that are not using a bonus at 1%, and then if they use a bonus, something higher. And that's worth looking at again, because when we did the feasibility study with Libby Seifel's office, it was based on the old way of doing the math. So it is worth just looking at how does the math work now? What is the right percentage to get the outcome that we really want to see?
Great, thank you.
You're on mute, Mr. Mayor. I think you probably are calling on Councilmember Beach.
Well, actually, I was saying some really brilliant things. But
Yes, my apologies.
Mr. Director, I wonder if you could comment on the SB 9 issue that Councilmember Coulson raised.
Yes, thank you. If a city is going to make any assumptions with SB 9 in its housing inventory, it needs to have some sort of rationale behind it. It's a little easier with the ADUs because we have a track record. We have an annual average that we kind of know. SB 9 is untested. We did have a meeting this week with HCD. It was basically all the Bay Area jurisdictions and then all the HCD reviewers. It was a huge meeting, and we did discuss SB 9. Getting to Councilmember Coulson's point, it may be that the whole SB 9 discussion was a whole lot about a fairly low impact. Some may be familiar with the Turner Center study that was done on SB 9, which estimated that of all the single family lots in the state, only about 5% were really viable for these types of duplex or lot split projects. So using that kind of, you have to kind of give some assumption. If we were to say we expect a certain number of units through this duplex legislation, we need to have some kind of rationale behind it. I don't think HCD would accept that we just say, we have thousands of single family lots and now we can have twice as many. They'll push back and say, well, we don't think most of them are going to redevelop into duplexes. So I think we probably assume, we could use a 5% number and just say we think that that's maybe, it's a shot in the dark. It's probably even less than that, honestly, because the lots are so small in Burlingame and most neighborhoods that when you look at viability, how, does it really make sense to do these kinds of projects versus a new house? And that was also something that was discussed in that meeting is the market for new single family houses is so premium right now. Anyone who's kind of reading the Daily Journal can see. So again, the jury is out on how many of these projects will come forward given the premium on building new houses generally.
So fortunately, our general plan gives us enough ammunition to meet our RENA numbers without having to look at that. So with that, Councilmember Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just echo the huge thanks to Director Gardner for his hard work. It's just so inspiring to see the hard work that this community did and our council to create right-headed policies that lean into housing in the right places, actually working with nearly 2,000 units entitled. That's amazing. And 17% of them are affordable, including very low. It's awesome. But I just want to echo Councilmember Brownrigg and Councilmember O'Brien's comments about fully support tinkering with lessons learned. Now that we know how things are working, let's get the math right and do what we can to lean into increased affordability where it's feasible without stopping future housing development, both market and affordable. It's just really feels like our community is on the right track. So thank you so much for your hard work.
And thank you, Mr. Director. The other thing you had on your list, you wanted some feedback from council as far as the stakeholders that you want to reach out to. So I'm going to give you my two are teachers and city staff, and I'll just open it up to my colleagues again to share if you guys have any stakeholders that you feel should be reached out to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for rephrasing raising that. Director Garner, what exactly are you looking for, in terms of not the obvious suspects? How do we help you in that question? And by the way, I like your answer, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, and actually that's great. Those, I will admit, we had not thought of those ourselves. We do talk to the school district quite a bit. Talking to teachers, that's also a great idea. It can be anything from, who's interested in housing. There are the advocacy groups. I think we also want to talk to developers who are building housing, see particularly how can we get more affordable units? Are there things we can do to make housing work better in terms of the approval process, construction process, things like that. But yeah, really anyone that's interested in housing, maybe it's major employers to see how many of their employees they expect to live in Burlingame versus commuting from elsewhere. And is there something that could move the needle on that one way or the other from what the city does?
Thank you. And I'm going to call on you. I didn't see how the order the hands came up, so I'm just going to call them on the order they show up on my screen. So first, Councilmember Coulson.
Thank you. I would also suggest maybe churches and religious organizations, because a lot of them on El Camino Real have very large parking lots and parcels, and they've been expressed a great interest in solving the housing problem, and possibly some of those organizations would be interested in partnering and using some of their parking lots to, potentially house people, as well as obviously the Sisters of Mercy are doing their potentially big project up at Cole Mansion. So I think kind of looping all those people in are going to be really important because they're going to have something to say, as well as making sure we get Peninsula Healthcare District looped in on this.
Thank you. Councilmember Beach.
Thanks. Concur with Councilmember Coulson's comments and others on the teachers, faith leaders for sure. I think getting a childcare provider expertise too could be very helpful in this conversation. I think certainly Housing for All Burlingame, our service workers who work downtown, if there's a way to reach out not just to the business owners, the small business owners, but the folks who actually work in our commercial districts, we could do that. And I think labor is an important stakeholder to have at the table as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Brien.
I would just be interested in the feedback of our own employees that work for the city.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, unless anybody has any other additional comments, are we ready to move on? Yeah, I see you. Come on. Public comment. I know.
Public comment.
I know. Okay.
Let's
Okay.
just make sure I see a hand up. So I will.
Thank you, please.
Jennifer Fact. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. I wonder if it would be possible to make a RENA for Dummies sheet. There's so much I don't understand about how these are calculated, and also going forward, are these, if you produce your 2,000 or whatever it is it looked at as, oh, they got the 2,000 so they can do, I don't know how many other 1,000 the next time? Is that used almost as a accelerant? So it would be really great if there's a simple one sheet or half a sheet, I don't know, document that could be available to the public to just understand how this works. That would be great.
I don't have any emails and I don't see any other hands up from the public, so I think we can go back to council.
Very good. Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Thank you. I really appreciated the comments of colleagues. I agree with all of those interest groups. The one, Ms. Pfaff's comment triggered, RENA is a whole different animal, but it triggered the whole question in my mind about preservation. So I wonder how our housing element, or whether our housing element should also consider preservation of existing, de facto affordable units. We've talked in the past about creating incentives for older units and things like that. I don't know whether it's appropriate in the housing element, but I do strongly believe that those de facto affordable units are going to start disappearing if we don't think proactively about them. So just a thought for the director, and maybe there's a way to talk about also preservation, not just creation.
Yeah, thank you for that, because we have talked about that in the past many times, and I think that would be great to bring it up so we could put a program in place. Yeah, good thoughts. And with that, any other colleagues, any other comments, or are we all ready to move along? So Director Gardner, thank you for everything and everything your whole department has done. Thank you. And with that,
Great. So thank you, Kevin. That was great. And our last strategic priority is infrastructure. And so we have an encore performance from Syed.
Thank you, Lisa. Mr. Mayor and Council, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation like Kevin did. So I have some update and some information, and now looking for your feedback and input. So as you know, with regards to infrastructure, city has been busy planning, designing, constructing various projects involving roadways, sidewalks, storm drainage, water, wastewater, and we are also working with the One Shoreline to design, plan and design the shoreline protection along the bayfront. We've been pretty busy with them. We're also working with the city of Millbrae, exploring a joint recycled water facility there. So at some point we will come to City Council with the information on those projects. For the purposes of today's meeting, I will be focusing on Broadway Grade Separation Project, which was one of the highest priority project from infrastructure perspective the City Council had laid out a few years ago. As you all know, that Broadway for several years has been the #1 grade crossing in the state of California for the grade, to build a grade separation, and because of the high collision rate involving trains and motorists, and also traffic congestion. We've been working with the Caltrain and Transportation Authority to design the project. We have received all environmental approvals from Federal Transportation Administration. The project is advanced to final design phase right now, and we are hoping to get it shovel ready soon for construction. And just to remind you briefly is that the project, for those who are unaware of the details, the scope of the project involves separating the road and the railroad tracks and building a brand new state-of-the-art train station at Broadway, and adding multiple east-west pedestrian, bicycle, connections between on both sides of the railroad tracks, and also adding bike ped amenities in a parking lot. The project also involves realigning the train station entrance at Carmelita on California Drive to make it more easier for flow for pedestrians, bicyclists, and traffic. And so, as you may recall, a few months ago or earlier last year, a year ago or so, we had given you an update that the project funding, the overall cost of the project at the time was estimated at $328 million. And we have received about $27 million in funding through the Measure A program, as well as city contribution of $1.5 million. We are working tirelessly with Lisa's leadership, getting with our consultant, federal advocacy consultant, lobbyist, Ferguson Group, to find money at the federal level. And we have applied for multiple grants. So far, we are not successful, but we are looking for this new program that was just released by Biden administration. It's called MEGA program. So we are hopeful that.
Syed, you muted yourself.
Sorry, I don't know. Was it just now or was it too long ago?
Probably about the last sentence, right after
Okay.
the mega project you mentioned.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Lisa. So we are also working with the Congresswoman Jackie Spears' office and Senator Padilla's office and several other folks to be able to find funding. In addition to that, we have been doing value engineering, as Councilmember Beach mentioned earlier, and I would like to also point out that this council subcommittee consisting of Mayor Ortiz and Councilmember Beach have been involved in the details and the background to negotiate the issues that city had with Caltrain about value engineering. We had identified a number of options to save money in the project, and which we will be coming to you at the February 7th meeting to provide the details. But for the purposes of this meeting, we are going to save additional $26 to $30 million because we are redesigning the project. And essentially, it's making the project more, enhancing the project, and also saving money while doing that. One of the things we are doing is that, as you may recall, the project involved partially lowering the roadway and partially raising the railroad tracks. And what we're trying to do is trying to eliminate that. What we learned is that lowering the roadway would involve extensive excavation, extensive traffic disruption, which would have longer detour, longer disruption to the community, and extended construction timeline. And it would also involve property acquisition on a larger scale, and will also involve utility relocation and installation of drainage pump station, because the road will be lower, it will get flooded if you don't have a pump station there. So by not lowering the roadway, keeping it the same level, we will eliminate all these problems. And what we are trying to do is trying to essentially make the beams and the girder much thinner by using a different technology and precasting them possibly. And so it will require a lesser depth of the beam, and aesthetically it will be even better than what it used to be. And then also we are going to, the bridge structure will be raised slightly, about approximately 2 feet or so, but overall the aesthetics will be maintained or actually enhanced. And it will save about $23 million by doing that, and also save 6 months of construction time and about 18 months of detour. So that would be a huge improvement. We are also looking at, again, train station entrance relocation. As I mentioned, we are doing that through Carmelita. That would also have a lot of room for landscaping, as well as amenities for pedestrians, and also having a bike path that will lead directly, bike lane that will lead directly into the train station. So, and our parking, motorist parking and the bicycle will be separated from a traffic safety point of view. So that will also be another enhancement. And then we also looked at the platform reconfiguration. We had originally planned on doing a centerboard platform, and we thought we could save money by doing the sideboarding platform. And yes, we could save money, but in the process of evaluation, we learned that the project will be delayed because we have to resubmit the project and redo environmental, and that will cost a lot more money and eat up most of the savings. So we have discarded that approach. And overall, there will be more information on this as I will have presentation on the February 27th meeting, but we are moving along on this project, and the idea is to get it shovel ready and start the construction much sooner by employing newer construction techniques, by advancing some of the components of the project, so that it will be sooner and less inflation issues that cost-wise that we would have to worry about it. Another thing I would like to point out is that the because of the reduction project costs, we will have a better chance of getting federal funding because and so we are hoping that would be the case in the coming months, and we'll have the project under construction hopefully in 2024, late 24 or early 25. And one thing I neglected to mention is that by not reducing or lowering the roadway, we don't have to buy as many properties like the gas stations on the California Drive side, and then also some of the properties on the Carolyn side, that we will avoid major impacts, and so they will remain accessible to on driveways, as well as sidewalks, and all that will be minimally disturbed, as opposed to the old design that we had, which would have created huge impact on those properties. That's what I have here, but if there's anything you'd like to know more about it or other infrastructure projects, I'll be happy to talk about.
So colleagues, thank you, Mr. Director. Colleagues, do you have any questions of our Public Works Director or any comments? I'll give you my comment is the lesson that I've learned from this bridge separation project is that it takes a long time to get these things going. So if we're talking about other projects, we probably need to start talking about them now so that they get done in many, many years from now. So with that, I'll go with Councilmember O'Brien.
Well, part of the reason why, this is continually being delayed is because we can't get the funding. So it's, our staff have had this ready to go, and with the exception now of these changes. So, I'd be more interested in the reason why we're not getting the funding, especially when it's, one of the most dangerous intersections in the state of California. In regard to the height, Syed, of the project, so if you were keeping the road the same, the track, then how high up are we talking about now? Is it 15, 17 feet?
I believe it's about, I don't have that information with me, but it is, I believe it's about 8, to the bottom of the bridge, it's about 16.5 feet. And that would be the clearance for the purposes of trucks and all larger vehicles to go under the bridge.
So 16.5 feet.
That's what I remember.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember, Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two quick questions. One, I don't think we've ever been involved in an infrastructure project this expensive before. How much of the money do you have to have identified before you can start breaking ground and doing the rest of it? Do you actually have to identify the full funding amount before you break ground, or how does that work?
Depending on the grant that you receive. For example, if you receive, obviously you need a federal grant for this type of project with size and all that. So federal government requires a funding commitment, and which would be in the form of an agreement where each agency makes a commitment depending on who the funding partners are. In this case, the funding partners would be Burlingame, City of Burlingame, Transportation Authority. It would be California Public Utilities Commission and the federal government. It could be possibly MTC, depending on if we were able to funnel money funding through them, depending on the type of grant. It could be also state of California, the Division of Rail. They have a TIRCP, which is cap and trade funding. If you get that, so there will be multiple partners. So it will be an agreement, all agencies agreeing to contribute funding. And what happens is then when the project, then the construction can break, project can break ground. And then as the expenditures occur, each partner basically reimburses the lead agency on the construction costs from that commitment.
So basically you have to have the whole thing identified, which I understand. And I assume that, by far the lion's share is federal money, right?
That's what we are hoping for, yeah.
So separately, I know we have a subcommittee devoted to this, but separately, will we talk about that strategy and what levers we're pulling and toggles and so forth?
Yeah, it will be when we come to City Council at a future meeting, you'll have opportunities to discuss that. I will be more than happy to talk to you about various grant funding programs. We have a consultant team that is working on identifying various opportunities at federal level, state level, and also we have assistance from Caltrain and Transportation Authority. They're also helping us because this is one of the highest projects in the county in the Measure A program that is eligible for using that funds, and everyone is waiting for the gap, the funding gap. We need about $120 million from the federal government or any other source, in addition to the San Mateo County Measure A program that will help us advance this project much faster.
Okay, thank you. I have one different question, but I know Councilwoman Beach has her hand up maybe on the same issue. So I'll take my hand down, but I had one different question I want to ask. So.
Sounds good. Councilmember Beach.
No, thank you. I just wanted to add a comment about how important those local match here, the county's transportation authority funds, the Measure A funds, that half-cent sales tax. It hasn't been allocated yet, but there's placeholders and discussions when Syed and his staff have come that the Transportation Authority might be kicking in as much as $120 million towards this project. So those local funds have helped, and our local funds in Burlingame have helped keep the project moving. To your point, Vice Mayor Brownrigg, doing this initial design, starting to get some of the right of way and getting things moving as close as we can. But it's pretty impressive that county transportation authority funds may be as much as 120 million of the 300 million. So that's really huge. And we're very fortunate the voters of San Mateo County have said yes to infrastructure projects like this. That's how we leverage those federal funds.
Thank you, Councilmember Beach, for your leadership and trying to get funding for this project.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's probably best now Councilmember Coulson, I see your hand come up.
Thank you. I just have a question. So I know that, for the last probably 15, 20 years, I know Councilmember O'Brien's been working on this project. I know our past city manager was working on it, our past councils, and we seem to be at a standstill on this funding. And we have a lobbyist that we've hired I don't think we have an answer today, but I do think we need to think of a little more of a holistic approach on how to work to get this funding secured from Washington. Because I think 5 council members need to be using every contact they have, every past experience they have, all of the information they have to try to do this. I don't think it's a one person show or a two council person show. I know we're dedicated 2 at a time on this, but so I guess what I'm saying is, if any of us are going to Washington, DC for even other work, I hope we can work through staff and work with, to always make sure that we're constantly sending the same message and it's coming from a multitude of people on the council. Because I think that sort of depth in conversation and a broad number of people, and it even should be coming from, people like John Martos, the head of our transportation and safety, and other advocates around the town. Like, I just don't know how to break through this log jam. And, I hope we can just, use every palatable resource, every available resource that we have to get this hopefully done in the next, 5-10 years.
Thank you. Madam City Manager, do you want to comment on that as far as strategizing how we all work on pushing this forward? I think it's important that we all kind of understand how we're all working together on this, so we're not bumping heads. And so could you just comment on how we guide this effort forward?
Sure, thank you. So one thing, we just want to be really careful about Brown Act things. So we do have a dedicated subcommittee, which is yourself and Councilmember Beach. So we want to just be very careful that we're not, violating that. But in terms of Councilmember Coulson's suggestion, if somebody is headed to DC or has contacts or whatnot, you can always let staff know, and we can be good support to you and pull in our federal legislative representative, the Ferguson group, to kind of strategize about what meetings to have, who to talk to, and whatnot. We did meet yesterday. Was it yesterday, Syed, or Thursday? We met with staff from Senators Feinstein and Padilla's office, and from Representative Spears' office, and Brian Perkins, her district director, organized that meeting. And he had some ideas of, other ways we might approach this. So, and our representative, our legislative representative was part of that meeting. And so, we are approaching this from a variety of different ways. One of the frustrations is we have a really good project. We have, as Councilmember O'Brien mentioned, we have the most dangerous grade crossing in the state, as noted by the California Public Utilities Commission for, 5, 6, 7 years in a row, maybe longer. But we are not a blighted community necessarily. There's just various criteria that show up in these notices of funding opportunities, and the criteria that the Department of Transportation is looking at, that we end up getting marked lower because we don't meet various things that they're looking for in a certain grant source in a certain year. And so we're looking at all sorts of different grant programs that may have criteria that we are better matched for. So we won't get marked down. Like the infra grant that we applied for twice, that we thought we had a really great project. They changed what the Department of Transportation changed kind of the things they were looking for. And so it was really more freight oriented and less transit oriented. And that, hurt us when they were looking at we have to do a benefit cost analysis. And so that hurt us on the benefit cost analysis. So we are looking at a whole lot of different ways to, get at this. And I think, stay tuned as things shake out. But, if someone has a contact in DC or is heading there or whatever, please let Syed and me know, and we'll figure out the best way to deploy that council member or those council members.
Yep, and thank you very much. And I think it is important that we all strategize as we do make any efforts in this project, so that we all know where we're headed. With that, I'll bring it up to Council Member Beach again.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, some additional color commentary on what's going on big picture. There just hasn't been enough federal funding for grade separations across the country. And that's a big part of the problem too. But I think one of our best strategies is not just being little old Burlingame fighting for, which we do need to do, fight for this project. There's huge movement in Caltrain because of advocacy like our community and others throughout the corridor. Caltrain is embarking on a grade separation corridor-wide study. There's $10 billion worth of need to make the rail crossing safer throughout the corridor, including grade separations and other improvements. MTC is taking a look at this. It's got to be a regional approach, and there's a lot of regional work. So there's a component of the city needs to advocate, but now that some of the infrastructure package was passed in Washington, there's actually more money available. We're in good position, but there's also corridor-wide advocacy for more money coming to Caltrain. There's complicated challenges with Caltrain not even having enough money to complete its electrification. They've got a deficit, but we, projects like ours are getting a lot more recognition of how important they are for safety. And so I think it's kind of an all hands on deck, regional work, local work, and countywide work. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Brien.
Yeah, so I think some of my questions were answered by the city manager. This dates back to even Mayor Rosalie O'Mahony days. So I'm having a really hard time understanding how these other cities in the peninsula have been able to get their funding for their grade separations. And it's just been such a struggle for us. And I know we have a great project, and I know the staff has, put in the time, and the community has buy-in, and it's just, what are these hurdles that we really need to hone in on? And I understand, Councilmember Beach saying, this has become regional, but there are many cities that already have their grade separations. We don't even have one. And so, to me we really need to push for this project, especially when you have the most dangerous intersection of ICPUC in the state of California. I just don't understand how these safety issues aren't coming into play. So I don't know, how we fix this problem, but there's something missing in this strategy, because I think if we do not get federal money now, when there has been such a focus on infrastructure, we're never going to get it. So, this is really the time to try to figure out, what these hurdles are and try to get over these hurdles.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we've been focusing a lot on, actually, should we open it? Let's open it to public comment now. And Council or Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
You can unmute, Vice Mayor.
Sorry about that. I wanted to ask a completely different question about infrastructure, Mr. Mayor, but do you want to have public comment first, or should I ask my question?
Well, it's funny because I was just about to say we're focusing so much on this great set that we're forgetting that there's a lot of other infrastructure projects, and so please go ahead. I was about to do that, but I figured we'd do it after the public comment, but go ahead.
So I think this is a good news story, but I just want to confirm it. We had a ton of rain a few weeks ago. In fact, my basement is still pumping water periodically, which is incredible. But I don't think I heard any flooding stories. And so I want to ask our Director of Public, well, first of all, I want to commend the Director of Public Works, because a few years ago, we all remember some really disastrous stories for homeowners in various parts of our city. And so I wanted to check with the Director whether those investments seem to have made it through this latest real downpour, and if you see any worrying spots that we need to invest in to make sure that we continue to protect homeowners, residents, business owners. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you for that. And I think after the tragedy in Millbrae, I think that's an excellent question. So, Mr. Director.
Through the mayor, in short, the investment the city has made over the years definitely has made a huge difference in terms of alleviating the localized flooding as well as the flooding up in the hills. We had a lot of rain in a short amount of time in late October and in December, but we did relatively very well. We did have some locations where the garages were subterranean garages experienced some flooding. And because the design of the garages are in such a situation that they would have, and then you have a groundwater, so that does not help. But generally speaking, those investments have done a huge dent in our overall flood protection system. What I like to mention briefly is that as we go into the future with the sea level rise, and we're working with One Shoreline, our challenges will change because we will have to deal with sea level rise that will come into the inland, and then we do need to have new design standards, upgrading our levees and further fortifying or making watertight systems to prevent flooding into the area away from the bay. The bay would be affected, but also still that would impact the rest of the city past west of El Camino. So those will be the new challenges that we will deal with it as we go further in working with One Shoreline.
Thank you. And thanks for the question, Mr. Vice Mayor. Councilmember Coulson.
Thank you. And thank you, Director Mertuzza, for bringing up the One Shoreline work. I do just want to point out that the RFP for the MOU assessment, we received, as many of you know, we received $4 million at One Shoreline. It was actually $8 million, of which 4 is going into sort of a reserve account for us to work on an MOU between SFO, Millbrae, and Burlingame. And, I think a huge level of appreciation, debt of appreciation, again, back to Kevin Gardner and his group, who have developed the first in the country ever, design standards and zoning and codification of how to build on our bayfront. And we've been recognized, nationally for this work. And now East Palo Alto is following behind us, and will be, hopefully helping all the other cities on the bayfront to develop this work. And this grant's going out. I think Councilman Brownrigg and I both had the opportunity to take a look at the proposal. It's on One Shoreline's website if you want to look at it. And the comprehensive nature of this is going to be to basically do an assessment of who owns the property, what the property looks like. We'll have an opportunity to look at what the design build specifications will be across the entire Burlingame shoreline, what we need to do for every single parcel, and then hopefully work on getting the permits and the approvals from everyone from our city, BCDC, the Army Corps of Engineer, and everything, so that we basically then have a shovel-ready project on our entire bayfront that then will be eligible for some of these federal funds that are coming down the pipe. And hopefully we're not going to get in the same situation we are with grade separation, because we'll have we'll be sort of already up and running and ready. And again, not that we haven't been in the grade separation, but these monies are coming in buckets of money, some for sea level rise, some for climate, some for transit. And while they all interrelate, I really want to commend City Manager Goldman for letting the staff pursue this One Shoreline, and my colleagues on the council for making this a top priority, because I'll tell you, I think we are first in the nation and leading the way in this whole conversation, how to build it, how to design it, build it, and fund it. So thanks, you guys. And I look forward to sharing more with you.
Thank you for that. And Council Member Beach excused herself. So let's go to public comment. So now we are kind of do a little catching up.
We don't have any emails, but I see Jennifer Pfaff with her hand up, so I'll allow her to talk. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you very much. I have a nuts and bolts question. It wasn't that long ago that we were talking about high-speed rail and not wanting to have a wall separate the east and west side. So this news of having a not having a depression at Broadway, I'm just wondering if the value or the engineering that is happening is going to, I guess I'm just going to say it, create though a different construction model where there is a wall. The issue before was also, I think, trying to get to level at Oak Grove so that we didn't have, the big loss of trees and the another grade separation issue at Oak Grove. And so I was just going to ask, it's maybe too early, if Syed knew if this new way of engineering, can we get to bottom? Can we get to Oak Grove? Also with the elevated bridge type of construction. That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And with the new engineering, what happened was it was a slight increase in the height of the elevation in exchange for not depressing the roadway, and that made a huge impact on the cost. But I'll let the Director Martuza explain that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jennifer, great question. Just to give you some comfort that when you, from aesthetic point of view, you will not notice much difference in terms of height of the new bridge. What we have done is to try to shorten the beams. There were deeper beams before, so the beams are not as deep. So we have tried to utilize that depth by raising the road. So we just have to slightly raise the bridge by 2 feet. But the good news is also that the Oak Grove will be at grade. The project will a few hundred feet before it gets to Oak Grove, it will conform to existing grade. So there will be no changes at Oak Grove.
Okay, and okay, so with that, is there any other public comment?
No, I have no emails and I don't see any other hand up.
Okay, so I'll bring it back to colleagues for any final comments on infrastructure. This is not just grade separation, it's infrastructure. So I'll let you guys, any comments, any final thoughts? I don't see any hands raised, and I know that we have discussed this quite a bit. So are we ready to, there we go. Councilmember Coulson.
Sorry, just a quick question to Director Martuza. How do you feel in terms of our funding for our overall holistic level of funding for our infrastructure investment as a city? Are we, we've had this, pretty impactful change in our budget due to COVID. And so we have moved money around, and it's, we've moved some of it out of funding for infrastructure. Do you feel like we're still funding at a high level and a level that's acceptable to your department and to our constituents? I know there's been some comment on Nextdoor and things like that with people saying, questioning, and I just want to have you kind of confirm for us.
Thank you for that question. I think city has accelerated funding for capital improvements over the last several years and decades. I would say right after we came out of the 2010 recession, city increased funding quite a bit, and especially with the TOT money being available in the prior years, as well as the Measure I, the sales tax that has helped significantly in funding sidewalks, street potholes, and all that. And I think just in the last couple of years, due to COVID, we had to reduce funding. And my understanding and assessment is that we're able to do all the safety related work right now. So that the funding is we're able to manage it. Yes, there's a lot of work to be done, and being an older city, you can never. I mean, you need more money, but from a safety point of view, we are able to do all the projects. Council has been funding all the projects. Yes. We have projects that we'd love to do, like Old Bayshore Highway. We need tens of millions of dollars. We would have to wait for that. Broadway grade separation, we have to wait for that. But the project that would directly affect the community, like bike ped safety improvements, sidewalk improvements, the city has been on the forefront of getting these projects done. And we also have been lucky. We have received some grant funds in the last year, so which is to the tune of $2 million. That's helping quite a bit as well. So I think we are good. I guess we'd love to have a little more money, but I think overall we are doing, I think council has been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. Vice Mayor Brownrigg, did you have something you wanted to say?
I'll just put a note down and not expect a conversation because I realize that we've reached what was our target hour. But it does feel to me that one of our big infrastructure pieces that we haven't spoken about in a long time is the water treatment facility. And I guess I'm curious how that looks in the sort of short, medium term. But I think now's not the time for that, Mr. Mayor. So I'll just note for the director that I think that's an interesting subject, just to make sure we don't get surprised, Mr. Director, Thank you.
I'm going to throw another one in there with you as the City Hall. I guess it's not one of the most popular ones, but it's something at some point we need to address, and we can't keep ignoring it. So yeah, water treatment plant and City Hall are not like the most popular projects, but we do have to at some point start talking about it. And when we talk about funding it, and then we see where it comes to these big projects like this, is we have to think well ahead so that we know where the funding is going to come to. So we need to start having the conversation. So thank you for that, Mr. Vice Mayor. Madam City Manager, I saw that you had your hand up. Did you have a comment?
I was just going to say what Syed actually said it probably more eloquently than I could, but we had a habit of not investing a ton in infrastructure because we had the recession in the late 2008, 2010, 11, et cetera. We were throwing a ton of extra money. So beyond the increment of the TOT, when the TOT was raised, that increment was dedicated to infrastructure. And a year or two after I got here, we were doing well enough that I said, let's put a lot more into infrastructure because we had been underfunding it for so long for very good, necessary reasons. And so all that extra money enabled us to catch up on a lot of stuff. And then we also created that capital investment reserve, and that reserve has helped us immeasurably. That was the money that we used to pay for buying the Rule 28 credits to underground the overhead power lines on El Camino. There's money in there for the city match for grade separation. We've used it for other purposes as well. It's getting pretty low, but the council very prudently, every time we had extra funding, we, sent $3 or more million into that reserve. So we were building it up, and now we have to, once COVID kind of becomes more endemic rather than pandemic, and people start traveling again, and our TOT comes back, we'll start to rebuild that reserve so that we can save for some of these big projects like a city hall, like whatever we need to do with the wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. Okay, so with that, I have on my list that we have to do public comment, but I think we just did the public comment on these issues. So, or do we need to open it up?
I think this will just be if there's anything, we'll just do, 1 or 2 minutes if there's anything that's not related to those agenda items, because we did allow for public comment on those individual priorities. But it is on the agenda, so I don't want to just skip it. I don't see anyone raising their hand, so maybe we have done it. We'll give it 1 sec.
Don't have any emails either, so I think we are good to go.
Very good. So, Madam City Manager, if you have some final words.
I do. I just wanted to thank the council. I thought this was a whole series of really good discussions. Last year when we did this goal setting, we didn't really talk so much about our priorities because we were all COVID all the time. So it was good to kind of get back to the basics and talk about these issues. I want to thank the staff for being here, and department heads have to be here. But Nicola Christie from Parks and Rec was here for the whole meeting. Ruben Hurin from Community Development, Art Morimoto from Public Works. I really appreciate all of you participating. And of course, Segal, who did such a fabulous job talking about sustainability. it's, you know, coming to a Saturday meeting is not everybody's cup of tea, but I really appreciate everyone being here and participating. And that is it for me. And I'm happy to say this is the earliest we've ever finished a goal setting. And I think Mayor Ortiz has a Go 49ers message for us.
Well, I want to say first, thank you to staff. You guys are wonderful and you really make our job very easy. Thank you to my colleagues for some great discussion. You guys are great to serve with, so I appreciate it. And yes, finally, before we adjourn, go Niners, and we will talk to you all soon. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.